Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 146, Meno 97e to 98a. Last time, Socrates was talking about the statues of Daedalus, which are so lifelike that if they're not bound, they will at some point run away. And he made the point that even if the statues of Daedalus are valuable and beautiful, they are not worth buying if they are just going to run away at some point. I did mention the possibility that this is going to be an analogy with opinions, that opinions as well tend to run away. But I ended last time by noting that with Meno, at least, opinions don't run away. He simply collects opinions. When Socrates asked him what arete is, he had no problem giving several answers concerning arete, which he had heard from Gorgias. We might think that Socrates refuted Meno, but so far as Meno is concerned, it's Socrates who has a problem. Socrates didn't accept any of the answers, but he still has them. If somebody else asks Meno what arete is, he'll still say he has no problem answering because he has lots of different answers about arete. Before we go too far into this problem, it should be worthwhile listening to Socrates explain why he brought up the statues of Daedalus. Pros ti unde legot auta, prostas doxastas aithias. With reference to what then do I say these things? With reference to opinions, the true ones. Kaigar hai doxai hai aithias, hoson menan chronon paramenosin, kalontoχρema, kai pantagatha ergadzontai, polunde chronon ukethelusin paramenen, ala drapeteusin ectes psyches tu anthropu, hoste upolu axiaesin, heos antis autas dese aitias logismo. For the opinions as well, the true ones, so long as they remain, they are a fine possession, and they perform all good things. But they don't want to remain for very long, but they run away, like a slave, from the soul of the person, so that they aren't worth much, until someone binds them with the reasoning of cause. We can imagine that true opinions, like the statues of Daedalus, might be a fine possession. You can show off to people how fine your opinions are. Some opinions you acquired from Gorgias and some from Empedocles, for example. But then Socrates also says that they perform all good things. And this would allude to the comparison between right opinion, orthodoxa, and episteme, where Socrates claimed that so long as the opinion is correct, it will lead to the same result that episteme does. And in that case, the opinions are different from the statues of Daedalus, because the statues don't perform anything good. I just throw the point in here to show or to warn us that what Socrates says is not necessarily true, and in fact it's almost completely false. From Meno's point of view, none of this pertains to him because he has never acquired correct opinion. He has only acquired episteme, so far as he's concerned. Socrates then continues the analogy that just as the statues of Daedalus don't want to stay in place, neither do correct opinions, or rather true opinions now. They escape from the soul of the person. Suddenly Socrates has returned to psyche. You may recollect that the psyche was where all knowledge resides in the theory of anamnesis, or recollection. It's no accident that Socrates has returned to psyche here. He's going to return to anamnesis in the next sentence. So, no matter how fine or how beneficial these true opinions are, they are worth very little unless they are bound, just like the statues of Daedalus. And how are they bound? By the reasoning of cause. Socrates doesn't explain the aitias logismos, but we do have the illustration or the example from the exercise with Meno's slave. Meno's slave had two correct opinions. He was sure that he was right, that the line, the base for the double square was on the 4-foot line and then on the 3-foot line. He was absolutely certain. What changed his mind? Refutation. Socrates showed him what the results would be of building a square on the 4-foot line and then on the 3-foot line. They simply didn't add up to double the original square. The correct baseline, the diagonal of the original square, was not a line which occurred at all to the slave, and therefore we can't say that he had a correct opinion at all. It was only when Socrates showed him the line and showed him what could be done with it, all of the calculations which led to the double square, that the slave eventually agreed that one should choose that line. As Socrates had pointed out then, the slave still couldn't be said to understand why one should build on that line, but he did say that if the slave repeated the exercise enough times, he would finally understand why that line, rather than any other line, was correct. In other words, in order to fix the correct opinion, one must have all of the calculation in one's head, including the calculations refuting the wrong opinions, the wrong lines in that case, not only the calculations leading to the correct line. In fact, the calculations themselves don't lead to the correct line. That line had to be discovered first, and then the calculations on it were able to be worked out. We might suppose that eventually the slave would understand that the first two lines, which he thought would act as the baseline for the double square, should not be considered possible alternatives to the third line. This, I think, is unlike Meno's view of Gorgias's answers about arete, which he regards as very possible alternatives to any other answer that Socrates might give. In other words, at the moment, Meno certainly doesn't have the concept of binding any opinion or unbinding an opinion. For him, all opinions are equally valid. But what does Socrates himself say about the reasoning of cause? Tuto destin, o Menon hetaire, anamnesis, hos entois prosthen heimin homologetai. This then, O companion Meno, is anamnesis, recollection, as was agreed by us in the previous. This is the first time that Socrates has mentioned the reasoning of cause, so they could not possibly have agreed to it earlier. Furthermore, this binding of opinions, whether true or not, has nothing to do with recollection, which was all about the soul having seen everything, being eternal. The person who knows absolutely nothing has only to look inside the soul to find what he's looking for. All of the knowledge is there. And as Socrates said then, there is no learning, there is only remembering. Nothing was said about reasoning, but the exercise with Meno's slave did come after the account of recollection, and supposedly in order to demonstrate that recollection was a real thing. Although when we went through the exercise, we couldn't find any connection with the theory of recollection. So let's see what they supposedly agreed to. Epidandedethos in proton men epistemai gignontai, epeta monimoi, kai diatautade timioteron episteme orthes doxes estin, kai diafere desmo episteme orthes doxes. Whenever they are bound, we're talking about the opinions here, whenever the opinions are bound, first of all they become epistemai, pieces of knowledge. And secondly, they become static. In other words, they don't run away. And because of these things, episteme is something more valuable than correct opinion. And episteme differs in binding from correct opinion. Here we have Socrates explicitly stating that opinion can change into episteme. This is something alien to Meno's thought. Meno thinks in a concrete manner, and episteme is one thing, doxa is another. In the best case, he might imagine that opinion, once bound, becomes episteme, or in other words, episteme is a bound opinion. It might be worth hearing Meno's reaction to all this. Ne ton dia, O Socrates, eoiken toiuto tini. By Zeus, Socrates, it seems to be some such thing. Could we have expected Meno to say anything else, really?